Do it.
Turn out the lights.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the start of the high school football season. It's great to be with you. I'm Bruce Hooley. That gentleman that you see in the upper right-hand portion of your screen is the founder of Press Pros Magazine, Sonny Fulks, and joining us tonight to help preview the MAC, the OCC, the new PRC, and the WOAC, the Western Ohio Athletic Conference, and others, is four-time state championship coach Tim Boeckman. Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Great. How you guys doing this evening?
Doing good. Ready to talk some football.
Sure are.
It's always good when you got the backdrop of Willie Nelson saying, "Turn out the lights, the party's over." Brings out the dandy Don in you, doesn't it?
It doesn't get any better.
Does not get any better than that.
As long as we don't have to take a drug test after it plays, we'll be fine.
Yeah, well, Willie, or the IRS doesn't know you're playing it.
Well, gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about, and we have some really good games. We've got some teams. First of all, we always have teams that win state championships. I looked this up the other day. 8 of the last 9 years, the Midwest Athletic Conference has put, our coverage area, rather. No, it was the MAC, actually. The MAC has put at least 2 teams in the state finals 8 of the last 9 years, 3 teams in the state finals 3 of the last 9 years, and that list includes 6 different schools. One of those schools, of course, last year won its first state championship, New Bremen in Division 7, and one of those teams, Coldwater, won its 5th state title in Division 6. Congratulations to them, but they're not guaranteed anything this year because we've got some other teams, including, I hear, Tim, the St. Henry Redskins look pretty tough this year.
I've been really pleased what I've seen with them. I've seen both scrimmages, and I think it's a really solid football team and could really cause some havoc within this league this year. It's just, it's like everything else at the level, Division 7 and 6 and so forth. You got to stay healthy. You got a lot of kids going both ways, and playing in the MAC, that's a major, major challenge week in and week out.
One of the things that strikes me, and I know there's going to be a lot of people climb on here tonight because they want to hear what we have to say about MAC teams, what we have to say about dark horse teams, surprise teams, teams you don't necessarily hear about on a yearly basis like you do Marion Local, Tim, or Coldwater, or St. Henry. But I'm surprised, Bruce, this summer at the number of football teams that have made quantum leaps in quality. And Coach, you and I have talked about that a little bit. Suddenly, a school like Milton Union, I'll just bring them up because I was there last week. Suddenly, they've always had numbers, but now they've got depth. They've got quality. They've got, I think the coach there the other week says, give me 50 that can play rather than 70 in the way. I got it. I got just what I want. And they're not alone. I mean, when you look around this area, there are teams, Arcanum's another one, Bruce. I've told you so much about their quarterback there this year. That guy's going to light people up, Bryce Schondemeyer. He is going to make people want to go out to the ballpark and see him. I think more teams that have suddenly emerged this year, Coach, and we talk a lot. You and I are together a lot. We talk about this than any other year that I can think of. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. I really think the COVID thing we got last year kind of slowed things down in a lot of different aspects. And then everybody got in the playoffs last year, and we can talk about that forever too, but that's what happened last year. And then this year they're adding 16 teams to the playoff. There's just a lot of excitement. And I think people want to get back to some normalcy, and hopefully we'll have that throughout this football season and throughout the school year. And I think the kids have really, really worked hard this off season for this year. And I'm with you, Sonny. Bruce too. It's going to be really exciting because there's a lot of very, very good football teams in this area. I think we're going to see some teams that are going to surprise some people, and I think St. Henry could be one of those teams.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we're going to see better football this year is because the coach has been allowed to have their contact with their players longer. That's in every sport, not just football. But a year ago, as you guys well know, the players were taken away from the coaches, and they were, right at that time. Tim, I'm sure you looked at March, April, May as a time where you could really make gains in your strength program and in your summer program. And the kids weren't allowed to be around until late in the summer last year. So the guys have been able to get with their guys. since June the 1st. They've been able to spend time with them. I think a lot of guys are hungry to play, hungry to get better because they weren't allowed to get better together last year. And also, I think, even though our area lost a lot of talent, I think we got a lot of talent coming back. You mentioned Bryce Schondelmeyer. We got Lane Sarvers coming back at Tri-Village. There's some really good players out there. Carson Bay, Versailles returns a ton. They return their quarterback, both their running backs. So, and then you got guys like Steve Nolan and Matt Burbacher, second-year guys in their program. You're going to see their programs take a leap because those guys have more time to get their stuff installed this year.
I agree with that 100%. Also the thing that's happened, as you mentioned, there's been basically no restrictions this year on practice. So the months of June and July, the coaches have had a chance to really take a good look at their teams. The players have been together where they weren't last year with the COVID again. They're in and out and this and that, whatever all. And I think the teams are much more prepared this year from what I've seen. I've seen two good scrimmages. St. Henry, as I said, I see them against Ottawa, Glandorf, and Elida. And I think these teams they're ready to go. In schools you talk to, there's that eagerness this year to get started in the preparation, and there's some really good football games coming up this early in the season.
Coach, I'm sitting here looking at my email, and here's 2 emails that I've got just since 4:00 this afternoon of people wanting to know about Marion Local. Now, we're going to talk about teams here tonight, area teams, and we're going to go through our Mount Rushmore of coaches and teams. And so I got a great question here that we're going to involve you in a little bit later on. But, here's 2 questions from people since 4:00 wanting to know about why and how Marion, this is a tired old question and maybe a tired answer, but why and how Marion Local from year after year never have a down cycle. And once again, they're in a place here this year where they've got their defense back, they've got their running backs back, they've got quarterback competition. Tim does a great job of coaching tackle to tackle in the offensive line, but you coached against that program for a long time and have been right there to witness it. You're more qualified than either one of us to talk about it. So go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you, number one, I really think continuity is so important, and you don't see a lot of that anymore. A lot of coaches, a couple of years, one place, they move on, assistants move on. And Marion Local has had that continuity. I was very blessed when I was here at St. Henry for the 20-plus years. We had continuity. The staff was basically the same the entire time with a couple of tweaks here and there. And that means so much. Secondly, the communities around here are just unbelievable for the support. In most cases, you got 2-parent families. The kids have got great homes. They got great place to go at home. And thirdly, and I'll be the first to admit this, Marion Locals, and Tim would tell you, they've been blessed with athletes too. You just don't win without athletes. And they've been blessed. It's kind of like us in the 90s. We were blessed with some great athletes, and we were able to blend those people together. And Tim's been able to do that. And once that program gets established and you establish that winning tradition, in a lot of cases, a lot of those games are won before you even get on the field. Those teams, you walk out there with that air about you, and you're going to win. And it's very difficult to defeat teams like Marion Local and Coldwater, et cetera.
Well, in that vein, you speak of that kind of tradition. That tradition doesn't perpetuate itself. It helps perpetuate itself. And Randy refers to that in a question that he sends here. He says, we're spoiled in the MAC player number-wise. Minster was a 4-team scrimmage with Shawnee, Ada, and Meadowdale. Meadowdale barely had 20 players total. Is it just a MAC thing or a city versus country thing? I think it's a tradition thing. I think it's a thing where kids grow up watching teams win, and they aspire to be a part of that tradition. And that's why. I mean, it's very tough. Tim, you talked about you got to get lucky with injuries. And if you have numbers, like I know last year when we saw Coldwater play New Bremen last year, I mean, it looked like Coldwater had like 8 kids on the sideline, but they were able to win that game because they had that kind of depth.
Hey, Coach, here's a question I just got from Steve up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, who asked, when was the last time that Marion Local has had a significant move-in player? I can't ever remember one. Are they all homegrown?
That's a good question. Those kids, I know what Marion Local is getting is a lot of graduates are moving back to their community. and they're coming back, and the community is getting a little bit larger. I know they're still Division 7, but I think that's going to change here quickly. But no, it's, you know, those are homegrown kids, and it's like, you know, as you said, Bruce, that tradition just means so much, and it just builds throughout the system, and kids just want to be a part of that, and that is just so important. And their numbers are unbelievable, and it's amazing. It really is.
So Randy referred to Minster's numbers, and we were talking about tradition. Minster's had great tradition, and Garen Stokes obviously built on that tradition. And now Garen is leaving, and Seth Whiting comes in. He makes his debut on Friday night, and I think this is one of the best games that we're going to see is Loramie at Minster. I base that upon what I saw of Loramie last year in a really tough game at the end of the year against Tri-Village. Now, it strikes me that Loramie started 11 seniors on defense a year ago. So I don't know what Spencer Wells has coming back, but that game jumps out at me. And Sonny, will that game be one of the games that you pick the first week in the picks page?
Absolutely. It's a game we're going to pick in the picks page because there is so much anticipation and expectation for that game in those two communities. Coach knows this. I mean, they're less than 5 miles apart. They're all first cousins. And so, I mean, when they get together there, pop a top, my friend, and let's play football. So it's going to be hoot and holler there. And the game's at Minster. There have been some blowouts in that game, though. There have been some, but there have also been some games that come right down to the final minute. So that's always a great game, and I think it sets a really good course of the season for both teams.
Yes, that's a real intriguing game. When you throw in Coach Whiting, who that's kind of an interesting situation too, where his dad used to be coach at Delphos St. John's, and I had a chance to coach, you know, against Vic, who I did a great job at St. John's, was part of that original streak, and now his son Seth is coming back to the area, and I know he's been successful throughout along the way. So that's that game, like you said, you know, you throw out the records. It's a great opening game, as you said. I think it's one of the better opening games around, and that'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
I don't think very many people are counting on Minster to compete for the MAC title this year, but Seth Whiting's using that to his advantage because in the interview that I did with him in the article we wrote about 5 weeks ago, he made a point of saying, just let other people talk about the teams they want to. We'll do what we do when the lights come on Friday night. So I think he's kind of counting on the Trojan horse impact of showing up with more than people expect.
Another game I like because it's kind of, I think, a clash of wills. I think Troy Christian's going to be better. I'm not sure they're going to be good enough to win at Tri-Village on opening night. They really struggled last year without Landon Rich. And to me, I saw them a few times, and it looked to me like they had trouble covering. If you can't cover against Tri-Village, you have an awful long night with the way Lane Sarver throws a football. And, oh, by the way, they can also really, really run it. Their freshman last year, Reed Ware, he popped Fort Loramie in the mouth, I think, on the second play of the football game, and he never stopped running that night. He's a fast little back. Tri-Village had a really nice year last year with Robert Burke, and that's going to be an interesting game. I think Sarver and Bryce Schondelmeyer, you might be looking at your first team All-State quarterbacks there, both guys, one in D6, one in D7.
Well, the irony about this is, and Coach, you can speak to this, when have you ever talked about a marquee football game and Tri-Village High School in the same breath?
Well,
that program's only 10 years old, and now we're talking about them being maybe in the top 10 of Division 7 football teams in the state of Ohio. Very ironic.
Well, exactly, and then you throw in Troy Christian and Coach Nolan. He's going to have them prepared, and that's that's going to be an excellent football game. And the thing you get at these smaller schools, and we talked about football a lot around here lately, is the development of you get some of your kids in the off season. It's kind of that, you got the Sarvers coming back, and you got the Coach Nolan, saga at going on over at Troy Christian. They're going to be prepped for that game. But that's going to be an interesting football game with two really, really good programs.
All right, now, Sonny, we know Coldwater is always good, always has numbers, but we also know that they got some guys to replace. Miles Blasingame really took over last season and really played excellent at quarterback, made some huge plays in the state championship game when they absolutely had to have him. I was under the impression that his brother Marcel was going to be the quarterback. What are you hearing out of Coldwater? Is it going to be Marcel Blasingame, or is it going to be somebody else?
No, the quarterback's going to be, I think, the holder for last year on special teams, youngster named Reese Dellinger. And I laughed a moment ago because guys to replace, their statistics guy sent an email out the other day. He says, well, we got 85 in uniform, depth at most positions. We feel pretty good about ourselves. So
Okay.
That's about all you need to know. Reese Dellinger will be the quarterback. Marcel Blasingame will be in that backfield someplace, one of about 31 guys that can run downfield and catch a pass over the top of the defense. So, Coach, you've seen what he does and how he just retools that machine at Coldwater is nothing short, hardly, of what Tim Goodwin does at Marion Local.
The one thing I'd say, you mentioned Tim and also of Chip, I feel they do a great job of working in young players throughout the season. They're not afraid to play some freshmen. They're not afraid to play some sophomores, and they'll work them in as the season progresses. Their roles will get larger and larger, and that team they're ready for the following year also, and they create depth throughout the year. As you said, Coldwater last year, I think had 8 players on the sidelines at one ball game, but they had the other kids come in and step up. It's just amazing. What they do, and they have numbers, but those coaches they're so open to working in young kids that really makes a difference from year to year.
Ryan Jones does not have that problem in the offensive backfield at Versailles. He's loaded back. Carson Bay is back at quarterback, and he's got a 2-headed monster at running back. I really like Jack Osborne last year on the edge, and Landon Henry is back as well. Versailles has a lot of talent, and a lot of people are looking for them to be really good this year.
I look at Versailles. If I had to pick a team on paper, and this is a team I think in the MAC right now that has got a heck of a shot at taking over from the Marions or the Coldwaters or whatever. But, they still got to go out and play. But that team, they've got, I think, excellent coaching staff. Coach Jones has done a great job there. He's put a nice staff together, and the kids are believing in what they do. They've got good numbers. They got a lot of good young players coming up. I've been able to see them over the years. And that team's going to be a challenge, a real big challenge this year. But the one thing that's kind of intriguing there, well, 2 things. Number one, I believe Sonny doesn't Marion and Versailles play the first MAC game this year in week 3.
That's right.
That is a
huge
big ball game. And then secondly, I'm not sure Versailles and Coldwater do play this year with the schedule the way it's set up.
I think the thing about that Versailles that has so many people excited over there, and I just talked to somebody at 4:00 this afternoon who said, hey, we're going to play power football. Coach, I don't have to tell you what power football means in the MAC because, Bruce, look at Tri-Village last year, what they did to Fort Loramie on the night that you saw them, and then they end up getting shut down 14-13 in the playoffs by Riverside of all people.
I never would have believed that. After watching him score,
nobody would have believed
60 plus on Loramie. I never thought you could hold Tri-Village to 13 points.
But for the fact of power football, when you can just turn around and hand it to Osborne and Landon Henry and run behind Tarantayo, who's 6'5" and 280 pounds, on a bad night or in the playoffs, when you can count yards like that, Coach, you do that.
Yeah, it's very key to be able to run a football play. It's also it's very important that you have to throw the football too this year. This day and age, these teams are so good, and they're going to load the box on you, and you still got to be able to throw the ball a little bit. And I think that's going to be a big key for success for Versailles to be able to throw the football along with running it for them to make that next step.
So if you've got that Marion Versailles game in week 3, that sounds to me like that's an advantage for Versailles because I think that's a little bit before we expect Drew Seitz to be back at Marion Local, is it not?
It is. I think they're talking about 3 or 4 games. They don't know if he'll be back for week 3 or week 4, or maybe even week 5. So, yeah, that could be an advantage for them. But, look, you can't feel sorry for Marion Local because they've got Kyle Oddie back there this year, who they say may be as elusive as anybody they've had. That goes back to the J.C. Guttemiller days. You remember him, Coach, when he played there almost 10 years ago. So they've always had quick backs. They're going to block well. They'll have something figured out by week 3.
and they're going to be very good on defense. They're going to be in every ball game. Then you also add that week 3, and I think Marion and St. Henry play in week 4. So there's some very intriguing MAC games early this year. Very intriguing.
You brought up about throwing the ball, and I know there's people over in Darke County in Arcanum tonight waiting to hear what we're going to say about the Trojans. This is a program that has come literally from the depths of desperation in football there 10 years ago before Shondo came back. Jason Schondemeyer came back to coach. They weren't good, and they didn't have players, and kids just weren't coming out for football. Suddenly they're throwing the ball, and they're throwing the ball 30, 40, maybe 50 times a game, and now they're getting athletes out of the hallway, says this looks like fun, we want to play. And it has made them competitive. Coach, to your point, it is going to make them competitive with anybody they play this year, including Tri-Village, because 1,001, 1,002, the ball's out, and you got people downfield that can catch it. You can score against almost anybody like that. And they're excited about that. They think he can throw for 3,000, 3,500 yards, maybe 40, 50 touchdowns. Those are enormous numbers for a team that 5 years ago were trying to run the wishbone and not doing it very well.
Yeah, Coach, that's the thing. Coach Schondemeyer did a great job there of evolving to what is successful. And, he's found himself a great quarterback in his son, and he's opened things up. They're going 5 wide. And as you said, it's so difficult, number one, to practice against that. And then as that game progresses, it's just very, very difficult. And the one problem you could have in this part of the state, everybody knows in Ohio, is the weather when you throw the ball like that. So, that can be a situation, but it's going to be very interesting to watch Arcanum and follow them this year with a quarterback of that nature and the receivers and the athletes that they have on that football team.
All right, we have some questions rolling in from Facebook, but first, Brad wants to say thank you, Sonny, for the articles on the Pro Bowlers over the weekend. So your time spent in Coldwater was not in vain.
My pleasure.
And Tony has a question, which I knew we were going to get to this. Who's your pick to win the new Three Rivers Conference? Covington has a new coach. You've mentioned Milton Union. I know Troy Christian's happy to be in a league. So let's talk about the reconstituted TRC. Miami East is back in there.
Well, Tony is right on the tip of my tongue. The next team that I was going to bring up was your Milton Union Bulldogs there. And I think Coach has done a superb job in his second tenure of bringing all the elements of Milton Union football back. I was there in practice the other day and watched the two-headed monster they've got, Blake Newmeyer and Blake Broomball. Those two guys, and I'll just, it ain't politically correct, but those guys are studs. Athletically, Broomball can play anywhere on the field, offensively or defensively. They're going to block well. They talk about how much they respect and appreciate their offensive line. They have always played with a chip on their shoulder defensively there. If you want to go get your head handed to you, you show up at Memorial Stadium and play Brett Pierce's football team, and you may lose a couple of teeth. So that's a team that I'm there's no question they're the front runner to win the Three Rivers Conference this year. And I would say if I had to slot a team in there right behind him, it might be Troy Christian right behind him if they stay healthy, because if they get through their first 2 or 3 weeks in good health, that team under Steve Nolan is maybe as good a coach team as there is in up and down I-75. It's just a shame they don't have 50 kids in uniform.
Well, particularly on the offensive line, that's Steve Nolan's strength. His teams at Troy were always strong on the offensive line. His Troy Christian team last year, I know he wanted to get his hands on those kids more and develop his line more, so he's had the chance to do that this summer. And if Landon Rich can stay healthy, they've got the kind of a fullback who can, control the football and punish people behind that line that I know he likes to build.
Let me finish this up for Tony Brown. I think this is really key, is their second game of the year, because they got to play Valley View, and Valley View just kicked their tail last year twice. The Spartans they're a tough out every year. They're one of those programs, as Coach says, about consistency. Things never change much there. And I think they have to play them in the second week of the season. They open with National Trail. That's not going to be a challenge. And then they have Valley View. And however they come out of that game, either mentally or physically, is going to have an awful lot to do about the rest of Milton Union's season, not only through the Three Rivers Conference, but what they do in the postseason as well.
All right, in D2, Piqua brings back a lot. Had a really good year last year. We think Bill Neese's squad, they open up at home against Belmont. Anything you'd like to say about the Indians, Sonny?
Well, I know he's got a lot of talent. And he told me 2 years ago, he smiled in his office one day and he just had his depth chart there. And he said, this freshman team never lost a game. This group here in the 8th grade lost one game. He just went right down the list. And he said, these kids are coming. This is worth staying around for. Now, they're there now. He did lose a couple of significant players in Gerald Lewis and Karan Coleman last year. Often their big running back, or dependable running back, wasn't that big. And Jarrell Lewis is playing somewhere up in New York right now in college football. He got a Division I scholarship to go play. So they didn't lose that much. Big offensive line. Coach, I think you know the reputation. Bill Neese coaching the offensive line. He can do it as well as anybody, he and Charlie Burbacher. So they're going to be nasty. And they have a very, very opportunistic schedule this year. It really favors Piqua.
Sonny, you took the words out of my mouth. They're going to be nasty is right. I had a chance to see them play last year once in person, and I was thoroughly impressed. And Coach Neese does an outstanding job. And he's had a chance, as we mentioned earlier, to have his hands on these kids now, throughout the offseason. And they're going to be ready, and they're going to be a tough out for anybody. That team they're zeroed in, and they're going to be very, very good. There's no doubt about it.
And, I don't think Bill would admit to this, but their last 60 seconds in that Anderson game that knocked them out of the playoffs has got to haunt him, because they did some things that they just don't do in Piqua football. They shot themselves in the foot and gave the ball back to that team from Anderson, which they hadn't stopped all night because they threw it 50 times with 30 seconds left to go, and the ball on like the 40-yard line, and boom, it's over their head and in the end zone, and you're beat. And that's just no way to finish the season in Piqua under Bill Neese.
No, and that's definitely in their crawl, and they're going to be, as you said, they're going to be a tough out for everybody.
That kind of motivation, obviously Marion Local has that, the block punt against New Bremen, which made all the difference in their regional game. Shifting over to Central Ohio, which we now cover at PressProsMagazine.com. I'm looking here at the list. I'm thinking, Piqua in D2. We like Piqua in D2. In D4, Milton Union looks pretty good. Versailles, Tim, you talked about Versailles and their potential Division 5. 6, of course, we got Coldwater and Arcanum. In D7, we got Tri-Village and Marion. We could have, if we get, the things go the right way, we could have a Press Pros team from Central Ohio and from Western Ohio win every single one of the 7 state titles, because Pick Central is hoping to get back. They've got Sonny Styles, one of the best players in the class of 2023, and DeSales was looking really good. They should have won in D3 last year, lost in double overtime to Chardon, but the Stallions suffered a big, big loss, not for the whole season, but for the half of the season. Friday, they had a scrimmage, and Jonathan Thompson, their outstanding linebacker, D3 District Defensive Player of the Year last year, broke his ankle. So he's going to be sitting for the first half of the season. So we're excited about our Central Ohio coverage. I think on Friday night, we're going to be covering Olden-Tangi Orange and Hilliard Darby. And we're also going to be covering Reynoldsburg at Upper Arlington. That's going to be a clash of wills, I think. Arlington likes to run it with Carson Greasock, who Steve Blackledge profiled on the site. Reynoldsburg likes to throw it. They've got one of the best wide receivers in Central Ohio, and Marquez Gillum. And their quarterback, Dijon Jenkins, threw for 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns last season. So a lot of Central Ohio coverage coming this year, but not at the expense of our MAC and Shelby County League and all the other leagues that we have covered for the last dozen years.
People have written into the last couple of years and say, how come you guys never write about Division I schools? Well, we don't have Division I schools in Miami County, in Shelby County. You can't write about what you don't have. There's a couple in Dayton, that have had some success over the years, principally Wayne, but I'm not sure even some of those schools are Division I anymore, the teams that used to be. But in Columbus, you do have Division I football. And that, we thought long and hard about the fact that it would be nice and it would be kind of balance things out a little bit if you could write about Division I football and had a better idea about where tomorrow's Division I players in college are playing today. And Coach, I think you could speak to that. You like football in any shape or form that it comes, and it is going to be interesting to see Pick Central play and Upper Arlington and those Hilliard teams in Dublin Kaufman and what Garen Stokes can do there.
Well, there's no doubt, and you just mentioned the fact that Garen Stokes is now there. It just kind of it's intriguing for this area to be able to see how he does and follow that. But I've got some situations up there. With Bob Hoyne's son was at Bishop Watterson last year, so we kind of got a little bit of a following there, and now with the Liberties and the Olentangies, and you mentioned those other pick schools. There's a lot of good football in Columbus and a lot of good football players, and it's very interesting for press pros to be a part of this now and to follow that. And I know a lot of people I know around here are starting to read up on that and the Division I football, and it's just a little bit. It's a different type of football. But it's very good football, and it's just fun to follow. There's no doubt about that.
And Bruce, I think you'll agree to this. The thing that makes that fun to follow is there's 32 teams in the OCC and a lot of different styles of football. You got everything from wishbone triple option to the spread. You got a couple of people still playing wing T. There's just a lot of different ways to play.
Now there is, and when you talk about the OCC, probably the two best individual players are diametrically opposite type players. You got Caden Saunders from Westerville South, who's just a phenomenal explosive wide receiver, a little guy, a jitterbug type guy. Penn State loves him. He's going to Penn State. And then you've got the big strapping quintessential farm boy linebacker, Marysville, Gabe Powers. They're going to hand it to him. He's going to run for, probably 1,000 yards on offense. He's never leaving the field. And those two guys, when the sports writers get together to debate Mr. Football in the state of Ohio, if they're healthy, I can promise you Caden Saunders and Gabe Powers are going to be two names that are going to be thrown around and bandied about as maybe the next Mr. Football in the state of Ohio.
One of the teams that we did not talk about yet, we got to do this. We have to mention the job, and I mentioned Charlie Burbacher a few minutes ago, the job that he and Matt have done to bring that program back to relevance. Now, that's Division III. You asked me about Division III before we came on tonight, Bruce. That is Division III at Tippecanoe High School, Tip City, I call them. They have built that program in a short 3 years from about 54 kids to 100 in uniform in freshman through senior class this year. And they've got a tough one at Bellbrook on opening night because Bellbrook brings back the house, and they've got two great individual players down there. But I think the job that they have done to make Tip football relevant, because there were some people who said, you don't have any business leaving the Central Buckeye Conference for a steady diet of Division II football in the Miami Valley League. They're about to prove them wrong because they're big across their offensive line. They're developing skill. And when you get that many kids, Coach, as you know, you get 100 kids, you're going to have some competition in the weight room, on the track in the spring, in the backfield. Those kids are going to be vying for playing time.
And the Burbachers, what great people, what great coaches, and what outstanding individuals to play for. They're what it's all about. There's what I call the football coaches that got it. They do a great job, and I tell you, that program has just been on the rise. And they worked on their facility. They put in the turf. They're down there in the park, and they kind of got that home field that means a lot to them, and it's going to be interesting to see where that program goes.
All right, Sonny, while you get your readers' questions ready, we're going to chat a little bit about what Ryan Day had to say today about the Ohio State quarterback situation. He says C.J. Stroud has separated a little bit at the position, ahead of Jack Miller, ahead of Kyle McCord. Of course, there's a new competitor in the building now with the five-star Texas high school quarterback Quinn Ewers enrolling so that he can reap the benefits of his name, image, and likeness. And he already has an equity stake in a kombucha company in Texas. Jack Sawyer, the D end out of Pickerington's got a spiffy new, probably $75,000 Silverado pickup from Mark Wahlberg Chevrolet. Coach, I'm curious, when you sent Jeff Hardings to Penn State and your son Todd and Bobby Hoying to Ohio State, Kevin Niekamp to Ohio State, what would you have said if they had come driving back to St. Henry in a $70,000 pickup truck?
I would have said, oh, my Lord, something's not right here. No, I don't know where this is going to take us. It's kind of scary. I think we've talked. Sonny and I have talked about this quite a bit and so forth. And it's just, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words when I see what's happening here. And and I think you mentioned Ewers has that I drink. Also, I think I saw the day he picked up a couple more things, and it's just crazy what these kids in college football now are going to make. I can't imagine what schools like Ohio State, they probably got to have about one person for each player to keep track of everything that's going on and so forth. So, like I said, God love him, I guess, but I'm not sure if it's right or not.
I've said before, it's the right thing. I'm not sure it's a good thing.
That's probably the best way to put it.
That's where we're
I'm
headed.
not sure it's a good thing for what happens in the locker room, because I wrote about this 3 or 4 weeks ago. That constitutes about 3 or 4% of college football, guys like that are going to get those kind of opportunities. Now, the other 95%, human being and nature being what it is, are going to resent that. They're going to brood and stew about that. I just don't know how good that is for the brotherhood, if you will. And Coach, you know what I'm talking about. You can lose the locker room pretty quick when you have somebody with cash dropping cash out his hip pocket when he walks across the room.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Sonny, because I remember Ryan Day, I believe, at the Big Ten when they had their media conference a couple of weeks ago. I think Ryan brought that up, and he said, "I wish there was a way that we could spread this out among the entire team." And he mentioned just what you said about the locker room and so forth. So I'm sure there's things going to evolve throughout time with what's all going on here. But it's a scary situation, I think.
I do think we're in a feeding frenzy right now where companies don't quite know the value of these guys as influencers and endorsers. And I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of engagement with guys that really aren't going to do them any good. They're not going to pay off on their company's investment. And so I think we're going to see this market settle down in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So now is the opportune time to get in there and make it while you can. We will have special athletes, the Zion Williamsons of the world, the Trevor Lawrences, the Justin Fields. Those guys will be making $1 million a year, but I don't think it's the second. I'm not sure every starter is going to be, awash in cash. I'm not sure that backups are going to be. And I guess my biggest concern is I've always felt like a kid who has a ton of money and is unsupervised is the kind of a kid that's going to get in trouble. Now, used to be it was NCAA violation trouble. Now you mix in people who are trying to get in these kids' pockets or trying to leverage a situation, a relationship where they can file some kind of a legal action against them because who said what to whom, who did what to whom. I think it's going to eventually be a nightmare for college coaches, college administrations. And then the other question that I have about it, guys, is I think it's not been really true that guys play so much for the love of the university across the board at a place like Ohio State here. And maybe since, the last decade or so, I think they look at it as this is my minor league. I got to go here to go to the NFL. I don't think the fans have caught on to that yet. When the fans see what these guys are going to be making, I think playing for Old State U, the illusion of that is going to be impacted. I'm just not sure what impact it'll have.
Well, you made a very good point there a second ago about that some of the guys don't know what the value of these guys are in terms of representatives for them and their product or their service and their business. And again, it probably is a good idea to get in early while you can before they figure out the term that we know oh so well, and that's ROI. What is my return on investment for giving this guy a $70,000 car? They're going to figure that out real quick.
Yeah,
well,
they are.
I definitely agree with that. And as you said, it's a big fishbowl right now, and you don't know where it's going to lead to, and we'll see, I guess.
All right, what do we got on question-wise online? Sonny, you had one you wanted to run by Coach Boeckman?
Well, and Coach, I want to make sure you can hang around with us to the end of the show because I think you're going to love some of the questions we have sent in.
Hey, before we get to questions, there's a big game down in Southeast Ohio we probably ought to talk about, Sonny. We talked about today. How about Wheelersburg and Ironton?
Yeah. We ought to talk about that because we have a question here from somebody from Chesapeake tonight, from Jerry in Chesapeake. Let's talk about that in relationship to his question. Jerry said, do you think the Iron Tigers have a chance to get back to the finals this year? And what did you think the biggest difference was last year between them and Kirtland? And we all three were on the sidelines for that game, and Kirtland spanked them pretty good. And I know the Ironton people there in Lawrence County really came in there with a head of steam and thought, it was their ox was the one who was going to do the goring instead of getting gored. So, Coach, I'll let you talk a little bit about the Iron Tigers.
Well, I remember that football game very distinctly because you said we were all three there, and I was down on the sidelines, and Kirtland just handed it to them. They were just a better team that night. They were better up front. They just did things better. And I think in that 2 years in a row, Ironton's been there and got beat in the finals now.
Yeah, by Kirtland.
Yes, both years. And it's just the one thing that we talked about, you've done that 2 years in a row. I know it's Ironton, and it's going to be an interesting season for them. And this opening football game with Wheelersburg, I believe the game's at Ironton, if I'm correct. And were they about 15 miles apart, something like that, 20 miles apart?
About 20 miles. Yep.
20 miles apart, and wow, you talk about a full stadium, and they're both in the same division, both in the same region, correct? And it's going to be a great football game Friday night to set off, that area of football down there. And again, Ironton's got it in their crawl the last 2 years. And that means a lot. And Wheelersburg that's a great tradition. I was down there a couple of years ago, Sonny. I went down there with my two boys and watched them play an opening game. And that was what an atmosphere down there. And that's going to be a great football game Friday night. And
about 10 years ago, Ironton went through a down period when Bob Lutz left there for the second time. And they were kind of floating around and had 40, 45 guys in uniform, I think, which was very strange for them. This was right about the time that Wheelersburg won their title back in 15 or 16. And I wrote then that Wheelersburg is the new Ironton. And somebody down there read that online and came back at me and said, oh, hell no, don't ever say that. And right about that time, they got their new coach in there and they started building back and they are what they are. But if you want to know, Jerry, and Bruce, you can talk about this as well. The biggest difference I saw last year, Ironton was big. Kirtland could run. Boy, they had speed all over the field, and Ironton couldn't keep up with them. Bruce?
Yeah, I think big and fast beats big all day long. And that was not, I want to make clear, a game that turned on one play. Kirtland was just better sideline to sideline. But there was a play early in that game that I think made Ironton think a little bit. There was a 4th and 1. They handed the ball. It was really the first and only drive that Ironton had mounted any threat. They were in plus territory, 4th and 1. They hand the ball to Reed Carrico, and he didn't get within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. And it was a one solo tackle, textbook, right around the ankles. And he went down like a calf that had been roped. And I thought at the time, that's a blow psychologically to Ironton when you hand the ball to your stud, your guy who's going to Ohio State, your guy who probably got you there, and Kirtland just was better on that play. And as the game unfolded, we could see that they were markedly better across the board. Tiger Laverty does a phenomenal job at Kirtland. They're there. It seems like Kirtland's there every year. So that's a lot to get through for Ironton.
Here's a question from Randy and Troy. Are there any advantages to the OHSAA expanding the high school playoffs this year? I've already heard what you had to say about the disadvantages, but are there any advantages? And Coach, I'll let you open up with that.
Well, that's a tough one. I'll tell you, it's nice to see teams in, but we've talked about this. I still think those first couple rounds, there's going to be some major mismatches. And I just don't know if that's what football needs. I'm not sold on 16 teams. I don't know if that's the answer, but we'll see. But I don't know. I'm not in favor of it, truthfully.
I don't like it for the fact that they've made it again just a participation trophy, another participation trophy for coming out for football. You get to play in the playoffs, and somebody said, "Well, this is doing kids a great service because now they get to experience the playoff, the joy of playing in the playoffs and the thrill of playing in the playoffs." No, they don't. No, they don't. They did that to make more games, more tickets, more revenue, stuff like that. The one advantage that I can see, and I got to owe this to Tim Goodwin, he said we would not be playing Wapakoneta in week 1 if it wasn't for a 16-team region and people now willing to take the chance of playing teams, knowing it may not cost me a shot in the postseason if I get beat. So now we're going to see some better games in week 1 and 2 because teams are willing to play outside their comfort level.
Yeah, I think that's the only advantage other than the money to the OHSAA. But I'm with Coach Boeckman on the fact that there just isn't the depth to sustain a 16-team field in each region. And I hate to see it. I think the injury risk is greater. I don't like it. Haven't liked it from the minute they announced it.
Final question, Coach. I hope you're sitting down. I hope you get your seatbelt on.
Oh, boy.
This is from Tom in Columbus, who writes to us all the time. And he says, who's on your Mount Rushmore of high school football coaches if you had to name 4 right now? Bruce?
Well, I can't say that I'm qualified to answer this question. So I'm going to consult the all-time win list. I'm not going to go with the top 4 on it, but I am going to put the top guy on it on my Mount Rushmore because 381 wins at Ironton is pretty amazing. Bob Lutz is going to be on mine. I will put Al Hetrick from Versailles on there. I will put he coached the Heisman Trophy winner, so I'll put Bill Gutbrod of Cleveland St. Joe on there. He was Desmond Howard's coach. And boy. I like Tim Boeckman and his 4 state titles. I'm gonna put Tim Boeckman on there.
Oh, boy.
Suck up.
Oh.
Coach will leave you for last. Honestly, I think Al Hetrick has got to be on there, no question. I think what he did for area football at the time that he coached is undeniable. I think you got to have Chuck Kyle on there, frankly, because he's been at Ignatius all those years, and he's got 11, which ties the all-time. That's the Babe Ruth of records for Ohio high school football, total all-time championships. And right beside him, Mr. Tim Goodwin, because Goody's got 11 of them too, and very good chance for the next year or two of maybe getting 12 and setting the all-time record. Boy, when you go for that, when you go for that 4th one, we talked before we came on tonight. I think you get somewhere in the discussion, you have to talk about Jerry Faust. Yeah. I know a lot of people don't like the way he did it and where he did it. And I think Bob Lutz, by the way, you surprised me when you said Bob Lutz because he won a couple of titles, and I think he lost in the title game 6 times. So he certainly was there a lot. But I would say you got to have Chuck Kyle, you got to have Jerry Faust, you got to have Tim Goodwin, and Al Hetrick would be my Mount Rushmore. Coach?
Okay, here we go. You guys hit Al Hetrick is definitely on mine. Al is a great friend of mine, and I just learned so much from him, and he is an outstanding coach. Chuck Kyle, I had a chance to do some clinics with Chuck when I was coaching. Another great individual, outstanding person. Tim Goodwin has done a fantastic job, and I just think that we're all Tim. And the one neither one of you mentioned, close by here, Skip Boffman at St. Mary. Skip just done a fantastic job. He had the continuity there, the coaching staff, and Skip was just a super individual and did things the right way. And that's my 4.
Skip didn't have the titles, but think about all the coaches he sent out to coach that have carried on his legacy.
Yes, there's no doubt. Skip is just a fantastic individual. And, they moved that. There's still people in St. Mary's are upset because they moved that stadium. Skip Boffman Stadium is no longer where it used to be. And, they moved it out there and they have a beautiful stadium now. But Skip is just one outstanding individual. And along with those other 3 guys, that's a tough question, but That's
so,
my pool.
Tim Goodwin looks to me like he can go quite a ways more if he wants to. We don't know what's in his mind. But if we were going to set the over-under on number of titles Tim Goodwin will finish with, and over-under means you're trying to make it hard, trying to make it a tough call between, do I bet under or do I bet over? Where would you set that? 13 and a half, 14 and a half?
Well, the mitigating circumstance is how long he stays in Division 7.
Okay.
Because I think there's a gulf between 7 and 6, and a lot of people, Coach, you and I talk about that all the time. I don't even know why there is a 7. I think they ought to go back to 6 divisions. We know why there's a 7. More games, more ticket sales, more revenue.
Now,
but
keep in
I
mind,
think that would have something to do with it.
Did they not win the MAC one of the years when the MAC had 2 other state champions?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think they won a state championship one year when they finished 5-5 in the regular season. I might be wrong, but I know they have made big runs in the postseason after a 5-5 season. With what he's got going there, and it takes a certain energy to coach. I think you have to want to get up and go to the office every day. And as long as he's got that enthusiasm for football, I don't know how many you could over and underwise you could I don't know what kind of cap you could put on what his career will turn out to be.
I'm with you on that 100%. And you mentioned briefly Division 7, and you know how I feel about that also, Sonny. I'm not a big fan of that either. But if he's got the energy to coach, as you mentioned, and I agree 100%, it's hard telling where you're going to cap that because their opportunity is every year for them to possibly be in that state championship game right now.
All right, Randy hits us again on Facebook. He says, what about Skip from St. Mary's, who you got, Tim, and Coach Reed from Coldwater? John Reed we didn't have on our list, but John Reed would certainly be under consideration.
Yeah, Coach Reed did an outstanding job at Coldwater. He was in my mind there and so forth. Had a great run there and did things, the way things needed to be done and so forth. And it's just when you start talking about 4, you could start rattling off 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great coaches out there, but we're blessed to know a lot of these guys and be around a lot of these guys.
And a final question from Randy. Sonny, he wants to know, why did Coldwater move from the WBL to the MAC?
And you know what? I let you down, brother, but I'll tell you, the guy there with the silver hair who can probably tell you why Coldwater moved from the Western Buckeye League to the MAC. Coach?
Well, a lot of it had to do with size. At that time, the schools in WBL were a lot bigger than Coldwater. And, the MAC was forming and so forth, and things were going on. And it was just a great fit for everybody. Travel-wise, number one, it just was a perfect fit to bring them in. And it just kind of made everything solid. And, they haven't looked back since they got here, and there's probably some schools in MAC now wish they go back to WBL, but no, they're a great fit, a great community, and I think a lot of this had to do with size and so forth, and just trying to get back to a situation where they have to travel as much and get in the communities their size, and it worked out real well for everybody.
Hey, Bruce, I would take an opportunity to thank the people who write in and send us the questions. Those are 3 great questions tonight.
Absolutely.
And
you guys who write in and the reader speaks and write to us at Press Pros, you help make the show. We try to tailor the show and the content to what you like, the site as well. We are not at all going to sacrifice anything we've done in the past and any of the teams that we have covered in the past 12 years. We're just going to add to it in Central Ohio. We also cover Ohio State. We cover UD, the legendary Hal McCoy on Dayton football, Mark Snyder on Ohio State football. We're really looking forward to the start of football season on Friday night. Sonny, have you determined yet what games you're going to cover yet over in Western Ohio?
Yeah, we will have the Marion Wapak game for sure. We'll have Minster and Fort Laramie, and I think right now our third game might be Piqua and Bellbrook, just simply because I think there's going to be a lot of interest in what that Piqua team. I don't think Bellbrook's going to challenge them, but I think there's going to be a lot of interest in that Piqua team right from the get-go. People want to know early on, is this a team that is as good as people say it is? Is it a team of destiny?
And with that,
I also want to I also want to add too that the fact that people send in good questions like that. You know, we got pretty good educated listenership and readership with Press Pros because, you know, those are not run of the mill stuff that who do you think the best player in the league is? No, people around here really take the sports and their football seriously, whether it's basketball, football, baseball. I mean, we got some of the most educated fans in the 5-county area around here you'll ever find.
And that's why it's fun to work for the site, and hopefully fun for you guys to read it. When you see the site and you see the sponsors who support the site and support the kids who play the sports, make sure you thank them when you're out and about, patronize them, tell them you're a Press Pros reader and you appreciate their support of the site as we do very much. We will thank those who watch the show live, thank those who watch it on the replay on Facebook and on our other social media channels. You can follow us on Instagram. We'd love to have you do that if you're in Central Ohio or over in Western Ohio. And we will see you all next week after the first week of the high school football season when we have actual games to reflect on. We're looking forward to it. Coach Boeckman, great to see you.
Better thank the old ball coach there for giving us an hour of his valuable time tonight.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it. It's always exciting week one of football. It's always
no doubt about it.
That's why we call you our football savant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, everybody. We will see you soon. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your week until the game's on Friday night.
Truman, go to bed.